Yeah, Philippians discussed all the chapters in a whole, discuss real joy when life isn't easy. The letter that Paul wrote wasn't written in comfort, it was written in chains. It's about, like I said, Philippians is about joy, but not the kind that depends on good days. Paul writes this chapter while locked up, restricted, and unsure of his future. Yet he's not angry at all. He's not hopeless. He's steady. That alone challenges us because many of us struggle to trust God when life feels unfair, stalled, or restrictive. And Paul is showing us what faith looks like when nothing changes outwardly. Now, in chapter 1, he talks and discusses about when God uses the places that we resent. Paul starts by reminding the people that God doesn't abandon what he starts. He which hath begun a good work in you will perform it until the day of Jesus Christ. Chapter 1, verse 6. Then Paul says something that doesn't make sense at first. I was reading like, But being in prison didn't stop his purpose. It actually expanded it. The elite palace guards that were assigned to watch over him daily kept hearing him talk about Jesus. And over time, the gospel spread through the palace because Paul couldn't go anywhere, but the message could. And those same guards were saved, became Christians, and they started spreading the information about Jesus. So what looked like a punishment to even us reading it or anyone else, it became influence. And in real life, some of the places we want out of are the very places God is using us in. The job we feel stuck in, the seasons that don't change, the limitations that we keep praying away. God doesn't wait for ideal conditions to work. Paul also said that people preached Jesus with mixed motives, some sincere, some competitive, and instead of getting offended, Paul says he rejoiced just as long as they was preaching about Jesus. That's maturity, y'all. Not everything deserves our reaction. I had to learn that. Everything that was brought up, I had to react. I had to say something. But he ends the chapter by reminding believers to live in a way that matches the gospel that they claim, not perfectly, but honestly. And chapter 2 speaks of humility, how humility is not weakness. Paul shifts from circumstances to character. He tells believers to stop making everything about themselves. Everything is not about us. He tells us to stop competing, stop needing recognition. Then he points to Jesus. Jesus didn't cling to status or rights. He willingly humbled himself and chose obedience, even when it led to suffering. Because of that humility, God exalted him. And one day, everyone would acknowledge who Jesus is, willingly or not. Paul also reminds believers that faith is not passive. It is not passive, y'all. God works in you, but you still have a responsibility. Now, in real life, humility shows up when pride wants control, when obedience costs comforts, and when serving feels unseen. God supplies the strength, but we still have to choose obedience daily. In chapter 3, he discussed letting go of what used to define you. And he gets deeply personal in this chapter. He talks about everything he once took pride in, his background, his reputation, his religion, and his accomplishments. And then says none of it compares to knowing Christ. Paul didn't just give up bad things, he gave up good things that were in the way of Jesus. He wanted a real relationship, not a resume faith like some of us want. Well, check that box. Yep, I did this, I did that. Doesn't matter if you ain't got no real relationship. And today, this is hard for us, for many of us, because many of us still cling to what makes us feel valuable, successful, approved, identity. Some of us hold on to past pain. Growth often requires release, releasing those identities God never asked us to carry. We can't move forward while gripping what God already told us to lay down. And Paul admits he hasn't arrived there yet, but he refuses to stay stuck. And some of us need to refuse to stay stuck. In chapter 4, he talks about training your mind and trust in God. Paul closes with an everyday instruction. He encourages believers to stay steady and gentle because God is near. When you truly believe God is close, panic loses its grip, y'all. Instead of spiraling in anxiety, Paul says to pray, to talk to God honestly, and to thank Him even while waiting. That kind of prayer invites peace. Not peace that ignores reality, but peace that guards your mind so fear doesn't run it. Paul then tells believers to be intentional about what they think about. If it's true, honest, pure, and worth praising, let your mind stay there. But anything else, come on now. Now, this is the last book in Philippians. And in real life, what you allow to live in your thoughts will either protect your peace or drain it. Paul talks about contentment in the chapter. He says he learned how to live with little and how to live with plenty, not broken by lack, not corrupted by abundance. That's what I can do all things through Christ really means, and more. Not achieving everything, but enduring anything without losing faith. Hello. Paul closes with reassurance. He said God sees your needs, and God does sees our needs, y'all. God provides faithfully, even when life doesn't immediately change. Does not mean you're ending, y'all. Joy isn't denial. It isn't. Peace isn't pretending, and faith isn't proven by circumstances improving. It's trusting God when life stays hard and choosing obedience anyway.